So starting out with the major shapes, I'm going to work from the centre outwards, so I'll see how much I fit on. The portico of the library goes to about halfway up the image, and so I'll put that in first. Can't see the bottom, there's a lot of figures. And then across, drops down. It's actually quite a complicated photograph with lots of details, but I'm going to be simplifying. So the library comes up from about here, that's the top floor, and curves round, going into this building over here. There's a little ridge, and then a panel, and then you have the roof. The building on the far right is distorted because of the camera angle, but I quite like that, so I'm going to keep that in. I'm going to make my library a little bit longer and have that just coming in down the side there. So to carry on this here, I just get this shape in, and then the wall curves and follows the same line as the roof. Then to fit in the windows, I'm going to put the top line on, and I'm going to start with the blocked in area with the pillars and see how we get on. It's a little bit tall, but I'm not too worried about that, because I just want the essence of the building, not necessarily an architectural drawing. So we have 2 pillars to the side of that, and well, I will make the pillars recede and the spaces get narrower as it goes away, so I'm not going to count them. They get very close together as they get further away, like that. I'm going to change the roof slightly because it doesn't curve enough. And then going down here, my portico might be a bit big, but I'm going to ignore that. So going over to this area here, you've got the bush shelter. So again, looking for the major shapes, the bush shelter actually cuts into this line here and goes right the way across to the portico, and then you have an oval shape going down here, and it goes over this building here. So I'm looking at this as a whole shape before I put the pieces of metal in. You've got this torpedo shape, which is yellow inside it. I think that goes over a little bit more. And then you've got the pillars at both sides of it. Then going down onto the pavement, the bottom of the Midland Hotel is over here. I do like the tram, so I'm going to possibly make that bigger as if it's nearer to where I was standing, and maybe the figures on the left I will increase in size as well. So anyway, pillars over here. 1, 2. There's a lot of little details on this, but I'm going to be leaving those until the end. This should be slightly higher. I like that street lamp there, so that will go in. And that's where I'll be using the masking fluid because it's very bright. So the Midland Hotel, Again, breaking it down into shapes, it's a very complicated building, and I don't want to spend all day trying to get every window. So I'm looking at lines that go from right to left, and then I'm going to be looking at the windows. That one goes across there. Slightly slopes up over this other side. So I'm gauging each floor of the building against the portico at the moment. I think I have gone a bit too high with it, so I think I'm going to have to rub that out and start again with that little bit. So I've just measured those out, and I think I've got them correct now. I'm moving on to the roof, and I'm trying to get an angle of the roof. I'll just do a faint line across to the other side. The other side is about level with the top here of the library, and then you've got lines that go down as it proceeds down the street or road. And so I've got 3 chimneys, 2, 3, and then in the centre here there are these dark windows, so I'll use those as a focal point and also as a point of reference. So you've got 1, 2, 3. So that's been corrected, and I'm going to start putting in window shapes. Not that many, because I'm going to use the watercolour to do that, but I just wanted to have a few anchor points so I know where I'm going. As I say, it's quite a complicated building. So there are dark windows here, 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, and there will be an anchor point. You've got an arch over here, and then below it a square window. They're the same width, and then you've got a double window above that. They're all the same width, and another one below there. On the ground floor, I'll just move that line a little bit. You have arched doorways, so there are a couple below my dark windows, and then one over here. Above here you have windows, and then just more windows, lots of windows. And above the dark area here you've got a couple of arches, and then the arches seem to go above the windows in pairs. And then moving over to the other side, I think also I've got, what I'm going to start doing now is put in a few suggested upright lines as well. Some verticals. So this has got arches within this window. This is almost a square actually rather than a rectangle. And then you've just got a blur down here. There are a few other windows going off up here and here. There's just a few lights you can't really see. Put another line down there and then one there. So I'm coming towards some wider windows here. And then there's some more. However, my building is getting quite long, so I might skip a few windows and rebuild the Midland Hotel in my own way. And and then I come to the corner. And then what happens is you've got the side street. I'll just make sure I've got the shape of the roof. You've got a bit of a spire there. And then gables. And then above this you've got a tower. When I lived up in Manchester, all the buildings were black with a century of smoke and coal dust and dirt, and I always thought the Midland Hotel was just a very dark, forbidding building, and I did like it. However, when they cleaned it up, I just couldn't believe the beautiful tiles on it. The tiles are so special, with all kinds of sculptures and images on them in relief. Well worth looking at if you ever go to Manchester. Chimney there. And I almost forgot, there's a big one of the new build tower blocks behind, so I'm going to slightly exaggerate that. Coming down there, it's a little bit hard to see, it's just blue, and we will just float that above the Midland. So going down this side, there are some more gables, and then there's a little turret down there, and then it disappears into the bush shelter or the tram shelter. I think I'm happy with that. I'm just add another story. Oh yeah, I haven't quite got my architecture correctly, but it's an impression rather than the real thing. A few windows and a gable there. So going down to here, I've got my tram, and I was thinking of bringing it forward, and I think I will, and maybe increase its size a little bit. But first of all, I think I better put in where it comes into the tram stop. So that line goes down there. And off the page. This building comes down to there, and this is pretty vertical, sorry, horizontal, and then there's a figure here. Oh, actually I better put my tram stop in first before I put figures on it. So this is underneath the platform. And above is platform. Actually does widen quite a bit as you go over here. And this comes down a little bit. So my first figure is, he stops about here and starts about here. So I'm just going to put in the shape of this man. He's got a backpack and straps. So I'm not being too careful. Just so long as I get the way he's standing, make sure that the feet are in the correct position below the head so he looks natural. There's another figure next to him whose finish is a little bit higher, so she's quite hidden. Can't really see what's going on with her, so I'm just going to put a vague human shape. And then there's another figure who's getting a ticket out of the machine, and again he's slightly higher because the figures are receding. So he's got his hand just putting money in. Quite like the movement in him. And over here we have somebody who's just walking. He's slightly higher. Actually, he's not really walking, he's standing. So these figures are all going to be nicely in dark, and they will stand out really well against the pale buildings. He's got a bag. And just put his legs, suggest them into there. A few figures down here. There's actually a step behind these figures, which is a little bit hard to see. I want to put the machine in, otherwise he's putting his hand into thin air. And I've slightly misplaced this here, so I'm going to move it in a little bit, this pillar, put it behind the machine, and then if I draw in the lines around the actual shelter itself. They look a bit wonky while I'm drawing them, but they're very wonky looking on the picture. It goes around there and like that. And that's where the yellow bit is. So it's getting a bit scruffy this because I've done quite a bit of rubbing out, but I'm sure the watercolour will cover it. So another figure here. Everybody is in suits because it's a city. Everybody is wearing dark clothes. And they're mostly office workers. And also students because you've got the library. That's the sort of people I tend to see around this area. Not necessarily shoppers because the shopping is further away. Got railings going down here. And then back to the tram. So actually the tram is probably in the right position. So I didn't manage to bring it in a bit. And the angle of the tram goes up there. And the top of the tram drops down like that. And I will just rub out the lines I have on it. When I first used the trams after they built them, it seemed very strange to ride a train on the road. And of course they have been building and building on this tram system. It goes for miles now, way up north of Manchester and way down south. I'm just putting in the bits I've rubbed out a little bit. And then you've got the other bush shelter here. They are really strange looking designs. There's the glass that comes out and that goes down, drops down there, and then the bush shelter goes in. I better check the height of that as opposed to the other one on my picture. Slightly higher, so I think I've just about got it. Maybe raise this side up a little bit and then take it in. And then you've got the yellow section that runs down there, and then a pillar. So I'm going to put a sign in, and I've got these figures here, and I'm going to put these very carefully. They overlap the tram, and looking at where their legs are, they are parallel to this point here. It makes them very tall. So maybe my perspective isn't quite right. This person has their hand in their pocket, and because they're close together, you can't really see where their arms connect. Actually, there is a woman in front of them that makes them look like they're connected. So those are my two figures. One has a bag. And they're walking. There are some shadows in this cast by the artificial light. So I think I put in another tram line, just about ready to start painting. Yup. I will just draw in a few of these windows so I know what I'm doing. there, like that. And then this, you can't really see what goes on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the masking fluid, and then I'll be ready to paint. Right, so having just moved house, I can't find any of my masking fluids. They're hidden somewhere, so I'm going to have to go in without, but we'll see what happens. I'll have to leave spaces. So really what I'm going to do is try and capture that end of day light. So I'm going to start off with a pale yellow. I don't want too warm yellow. The light in the library is quite a cool light. Maybe I'll go in with a little bit of yellow ochre in that light and a touch of blue. That might turn it green, but we will see. So it's a little bit warmer over on the other side where the Midland Hotel is. So I'm going to put a bit of orange into that. I feel that that's gone a little bit dirty, so I'm going to wipe it out. Just clean my palette a little bit better. And put in some fresh yellow. That's quite nice. There's a little bit of blue in this, which will complement the yellow quite nicely, and the orange that I'm going to be putting in. But first of all, I'm going to focus on the sky. And I'm thinking that I might use a cerulean type of blue. Or, yeah, I actually don't have much cerulean, but it's going to be a light sky anyway. So I'm just trying to wake the paint up. There is a purple feel to the library, so I might get a little bit of a purple as well. I've run out of palettes, so I'm going to take this yellow off and I'm going to make a purplish colour. So I'm going to use ultramarine and a little bit of a cadmium red deep. But I want to make a grey, so I'm going to add a bit of yellow ochre to it. Quite a lot of water because I want this to be light. A little bit more blue. So that will be the colour for the library. A bit more red. So right, I'm going to start off with the sky colour. Because there's so much busyness going on with the buildings, the sky doesn't have to be very busy, it can be quite bland. So just get rid of my rubbing out. And I'm going to start off with quite weak watery paint. I'm going over, I can put the things like the tree in afterwards, going down like that. Quite a bit more water. There are shades of blue behind the building, but there are also hints in some of the windows of light, so I'm just going to make sure I observe where all these different colours are. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter as it comes down to here. My paper is on a slope of about 30 degrees. It's sea white's paper, and my paintbrush is a ProArt Proline Plus. I've never used it before. It's a little bit too small. I should have ordered a bigger size, really, because it's not covering as well as I would like. I haven't drawn on that building. Never mind. Always put that in later. So this is my blue sky going down to here, and I'm going to take a little bit out to make it a bit lighter behind the building, because the building is going to be quite dark. And I might take a little bit out here because I just want a hint of colour. So there is a dark colour comes down there. Well, not a very dark colour, but a bit of a blue. And behind the bottom, you can start to see there's all the lights. So taking my yellow, I'm going to add a little bit of orange to it, because the light is orange over there. And I'm just going to put in a little bit of the light that I can see around where I can see it. Some down here. These lights up here are very bright, so I could always leave them white and then maybe fill them in a little bit later. And a little bit more brightness down here. On the tram, it's more of a lemon yellow. It's still quite muted. This whole picture is quite muted. Just going to put in a bit of yellow, but I'm going to leave the headlights out. And then it cools down. So I'll grab a bit of blue down the side here. And it actually turns blue down there. And yellow here. So moving over to my library while that dries, I'll just get rid of that line a little bit. It's a cooler yellow. So I might, as I say, put a little bit of yellow ochre into this. I've pulled a bit of blue from the side of the palette square, and I quite like that. So I want this to be pretty light. I'm just debating having a yellow ochre. I think that will suit actually. I'm going to go over this whole area. Because this will be the light coming from the windows, which will look brighter when I put the window frames over in a darker colour. There is also a light from windows down here, which I didn't draw in. And one there. The roof is a kind of a purpley blue of the library, so I'm just going to put that in a little bit strong. And it might bleed a bit, but I don't mind that. I quite like it when shapes bleed into each other. So we'll leave that for a minute. I'm going to put in a wash of this same colour over here, where the windows are, and it goes down around there. And then I'm going to leave that to dry. Further down, again, I'm going to put this colour on this part of the building. Quite pale actually here, and there's a hint of yellow in the glass on this shelter, so I'll do that separately. It comes down here, and the columns are a little bit warmer, so I'm going to put a little bit of yellow ochre into my colour, a bit more water, and just fill in that area there where the columns are. So going on to the platform, it's a kind of a grey. I'm going to maybe make it a bit blue grey. So I put some ultramarine into this colour that I had, this purplish colour, and I'm just going to put that on. And I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow ochre into my colour, a bit more water, and just fill in that area there where the columns are. So going on to the platform, it's a kind of a grey. I'm going to maybe make it a bit blue grey. So I put some ultramarine into this colour that I had, this purplish colour, and I'm just going to put that on. I'm going to leave a few little areas of light to suggest things in the background. Work around my figures a little bit. There is actually a van there, but I'm not going to put that in. And this goes pale over here. And over here, it actually goes a little bit darker because you've got the shadows of the figures and the machine. It's just darker. Put a bit more water in there. And the edge of the platform just goes to there. So you've got the side of the platform, but I'll wait until that's dry before I put that on. Going back to the Midland Hotel, I think that's quite dry. I'm going to put in the big tower block in grey blue, so I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to my blue and a little bit of yellow ochre. That was too much yellow ochre, it's made it dirty. So I'll put more red in and try a bit of cobalt actually. Yeah, that's actually quite nice. So that's going to be my darker colour, and I'll take a little bit of cobalt to block in the paler areas, which is this. Ooh, that's actually a little bit heavy. And then you do have some evidence of windows visually, but I'm just going to put it in as a shape. And I think that might do it. I'm going to put in a few little window hints like that. And make sure it looks a bit three-dimensional, having one side in shadow. And then down here, a little suggestion of texture. And that will do for that, I think. So going on to the Midland, it's a very interesting colour. I'm going to try a claret and possibly put in a sienna into it and see what colour I get. It's quite nice, but it's loud, so I'm going to put in a bit of ultramarine blue to cool it down a bit. That's not bad actually. Quite happy with that. So I'm going to start a little bit dark at the top, and then it gets more yellow as you go down. So I'm going to take my claret colour here and put some yellow into it. That might be too bright again, and a little bit of ultramarine to cool it down. It's a little bit warmer than that colour. I could put a little bit more yellow in. Yep, that'll do fine. So I've got to be quite careful here because I've got to leave windows. So I'm going to take my dark, and it's a bit more dry brushing than I have been doing. I'm going to try and get the silhouette of the building. That's very dark actually. Have to bear in mind that it does dry lighter. So using the tip of my brush, I'm going to put more water in that. This is a wee bit too dark, and just maybe take a little bit out. That's better. I'm just going to work my way down the building. Go across to here. Leave out the windows again. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going across to this interesting looking shape. So a lot of my windows are going to be quite white, and then I can just fill them in. It's quite nice to leave a few gaps because it suggests architecture. Oops, I've just painted over some windows. Never mind. Going across, just keep working it. We've got a few little darker turrets going on here, but I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there where the roof is, just for a little bit of a change of colour. And there's a little bit that goes down there as well. So carrying on over here, because it's got floors, this building, you can do each floor as you go. So I'm going a bit mad with my windows now. I'm going to fill in a little bit. And again, I've got chimneys here, which is rather nice. So 1, that's going to bleed, which is all right. 2 and 3. And then you've got your gable here. Going over to here. Now, interestingly enough, because you've got the street lamp around here, these look a lot lighter, but they're also, because it's a grey slate roof, there is a hint of blue going on in that bit. So I'm just going to put some blue. And you've got quite interesting little triangles going on a bit. I've gone a bit too dark. We should save that really until I'm doing my details. Go down there. So this is quite cold, this colour, but when I get further down, I'm quite looking forward to warming it up a little bit. So all these windows seem to be a little bit dark. So I'm going to go in with a palish purpley colour, but I'm going to put a little bit of blue in there, and I'm just going to wash over these, and then I will go darker. Now, I've got a lamp here, so I'm going to very carefully go around the light. And there's another bit of the Midland goes on here. And it's a little bit hard to discern where the hotel ends and this portico starts, but I will be putting a dark line in there. I'm going to, because I've got lights going on here, I'm going to use a little bit of orange and just put some orange into this area. Put too much, so I'll just pull it off with my brush. And I'm going to soften the edges where my lights will be. I think I've lost it a bit. I will scrape it off. Actually, that's quite nice. I like that. It's a little bit more abstract than I intended to be, but I like it, so I'll leave it. So going down here, I've got this same window colour. I'm going to go a little bit darker around these windows. And then when you come to the bottom, the windows are mostly in darkness. So I'll just go over these. I'm looking very carefully to leave little areas where there might go down to, these are my darkest windows here. Put a bit more of this colour in here. And then over here you start to get a little bit of the light coming through on the windows, so I'm going to work my way round them and then probably fill them in later. Actually, that yellow's dry, so I can put in a little bit of a window frame. And going down to the ones below, I'm just going to put the frame in and fill those in later. Over here, more windows. So when you're painting an urban scene, it's usually going to be very busy, so try for an impression of what you see rather than every accurate little detail. Try and look for big shapes to fill in, and also try and get a bit of mood into it. My sky has gone quite dark, but I really like that. And I also like the staining, which was accidental, of course, not intentional, but I like that, so I'll keep it in, not that I can do anything about it. So going down to here, it does start to warm up here, and I've been wanting to do the warmer bit. So into my warmer colour, and I'm going a little bit darker. That's an accident, but I'll stay with it. The bottom of the building, you can barely see what's going on. There are some lights though, so I'm just going to put a few in. And the tram shows up quite brightly against the dark behind it, so I'm going to make sure that I very carefully just paint round it to get the shape. There's some windows in there. I'm going to take some of this warm colour up into here. There's a few windows there as well. And just fill in this bit. Try and get the shape of my tram. You can see an arch there actually. And you have a lit window down here, but then you have quite dark arches. So I can go a little bit darker next to the portico of the library, so that stands out quite nicely. So I'll put a line up to it and then pull it out. There are quite a few figures and shapes in the back there, and I'll just make suggestions of those. So all in all, I think I have gone from very dark to light to dark again. So I will do a little bit of darkening in here. Don't have to go too dark because I can put the features on a bit darker. And what was this? Oh yes, this is a bit I missed. There are also shadow lines that go along, so I'm going to put those in. Lost my windows here a little bit. And there's some dark lines there. Actually, this shape goes up a little bit here. And I think that my dark windows were here. I'd better put those in because I'm losing them. So one was there. One was there. And another one above. A bit too dark, take some out. And the side of the building is slightly more blue. So I'm just going to put a little bit of blue into that. And I'm just going to suggest this. Now the sky has dried. Oh. White night paints, they like to stick. So I'm just going to draw the turret over the top of it. And then you've got a gable going up there. So I've blued this up. It is slightly darker. I'm going to add a little bit of purple though, otherwise it will look like a different building. Like so. This gable I haven't done. That's actually got a roof behind it. So I'll take this blue and just put that in. And a little bit of roof there, maybe a bit here. So for now, I'm all right with that. It will need darkening just a little bit, I think. But I'll start on the library so that I can judge tonally. I will actually put a little bit more of this warm colour at the bottom. So it was a bit of the claret colour, which is similar to alizarin from this palette, and a little bit of ochre, a bit more red. Oh, wrong red, that's no good. So claret, bit of yellow, that will do, and a bit more, and a bit of blue to cool it down. Maybe a bit more claret in there. And yes, that will do. I'll put a little bit more of that on down here. It's a little bit too pink. Some more yellow in it. And that will turn it brown. But it adds a little bit of an interest. Okay, so moving on to the library, I'm going to be going with a dark blue grey. So I'm using ultramarine. And a little bit of the crimson and a little bit of yellow ochre to grey it up a bit. That is my usual recipe for grey. I don't tend to go with Payne's grey. I quite like mixing greys with the yellow, the red and the blue, because I find that I can get quite a variety of greys and they seem to have more life in them. So going onto the roof here, I don't think it's that dark. That's too dark. Add a bit of water to it. Like that. And I'm going to, with the tip of my brush, also draw this area here, which is almost looks a bit like it's a side of the building, but you've got drips of water stain going down it. So moving on to the windows, they are quite pale. I did mix a colour earlier and I think I lost it on my palette. So I just want a pale bluish grey. My yellow is quite strong, so I'm not sure how this will turn out. Some little bits of this are actually a bit paler than what I'm doing. We've got another pillar here and that one there. You do have shadows over the top of the windows. And I'm just going to fill in the columns here. They have gone a little bit green over the windows, but I don't mind that so much. And you've got the middle line. And then you have the frames. I'm going to put a few little shadows inside the windows. That's too dark. Just take that out a little bit. They're actually a little bit closer together as you go down here. So I'll put in an extra one. And then within the windows you can just see panes of glass. And I'm going to add a little bit more yellow ochre to that because it's quite a dirty yellow ochre colour. You can just see some shapes within there. So you do have a shadow there, and you have a few lines going on within there. But down below you just have the hint of some kind of architecture. And on this side as well, some shadows. The roof is actually more curved, so I'm just going to take a dark bluish colour and curve it a little bit more. Like that. And above here there's a shadow which goes across here, and you've got a shadow there and drops over to there. So looking at the glass shelter, there is a hint of yellow in that glass, so I'm going to put some yellow into my bluish colour, and I'm just going to block that in like that. I have a shadow, while that's drying, a shadow under my portico here, which is slightly purplish, so I'm putting a little bit of crimson in, or claret, into my mix on the palette, and then I'm just going to put that shadow line under. When you're going for your details, you want them to be pretty sharp. I'm going to put a line down there because it's darker, and then you actually have the lamp post there. My lamp has somewhat disappeared. Really, I should wait to do this to the end, but I was quite looking forward to doing the lamp, so there it is. I'm going to take a bit of yellow and put that over it, around it. Like that. So going over to my Midland Hotel while that dries, I think I need to fill in the windows a little bit because most of these are dark. And I can go over my painting already. That just adds a hint of colour in here. And if I look up there, that's also got no lights on, so I can just slightly blue them up. Going down here, this one's a bit blue. I'm going to go in a little bit heavier in my roof now, so that the windows show up a little bit more. I can start putting in some architectural features with a darker colour. That's quite dark there. So just building on what I already have. A bit more blue. And I'm going to go darker into my library portico because that's just dried. And that will stand out a little bit more. There are also a few lines on it. So I've got a sharp line goes up there. Another line that goes down there. Then it goes up a crown and then round like that. And then round here. Then you've got another one. And I'm going to make this a little bit more purple under here. And add a little bit of yellow ochre to warm it up a bit and pull this down like that. Really, there isn't any white on these. So what I might do is go in with a bit more blue. Down there, like that. I'm going to put some yellow on my shelter. There are a few little lines of pale colour in there. And my platform has faded quite a bit. I'm going to put in this dark line. Goes off there. And the line underneath is darker, but I will leave that for now. I'm going to put the tram lines in. Actually, first, before I do that, I think I need to put in a little bit of blue into where the tram goes, just to fill it a little bit. Make it quite pale. And I'm just trying to put a little bit of texture into the surface there. I'm also going to put in the pavement on the other side. So that's going to be a little bit purpley blue and a bit darker. And then it disappears behind there into sort of a yellow ochre colour. And put a bit of red into that. a bit dark. There's a statue behind there actually. And there's some suggestions of street. There's also the other part of this building that comes under the shelter, and that's quite dark. But as it reaches down to the bottom, I think it's a little bit lit by street lamps. So I'm just going to suggest some kind of something back there. It's not a focal point, so it doesn't have to be in detail. Oops, might take that off. That was supposed to be yellow. Just to give the impression that there is a shop or something, or some kind of light coming from the side over here. Going to add a little bit of a glow over here as well. So going back to the figures, I think I'll start putting detail, but first I have to fill in behind here. So I'm going to use this purpley blue again. Bit of blue, bit of the claret colour, bit more blue. And that's the side of the library. So you do have windows, so I've got to be quite careful of my windows. Within the shelter there are actually a couple of framed panels, so I'll just put those in. It's behind the figure, and that one, so I can just see where I'm going. And then back to my building colour, put in those arched windows. And I'll go across to this side, and that is also an arched window. Realise I haven't started on my building yet. That will come. And just fill in this bottom bit with suggestion. There are quite a few figures down here, so I'll probably put those in. Going over to this building, I think I will just draw it in. It is slightly darker than the library, so it has lines going off up there, and then all the windows are dark, but I'm going to have some lit. Another one above, and I am giving a nod to perspective, trying to angle them a little bit more as they go up. And then there's a top one there. So I basically cut off the top of my building. Another one here. And then you just got hints of ones going off here. And down below, you've got two little smaller ones. You've got quite a big line that goes over there. And then you've got these rather nice arches. Another one there. And And you have a figure actually here, so I might put that figure walking in. They're lower than this figure. And if I have them leaning in, they will bring the eye into the picture quite nicely. So they're just walking down. So moving on to painting of this building, I'm just going to put in a lighter version of the Midland Hotel colour with a little bit more yellow in it, so it's quite warm. And I think it should be darker than the library, because then the library will stand out. I'm going to drop a bit of yellow oak into that. The windows are quite dark actually. Apart from I'm going to put some lit ones in there, which I should have done first. I tend to, because I'm mostly painting acrylics and water-based oils, I tend to find with watercolour I end up working dark to light, but I find it works quite well for me on the whole. And then coming down here, got one window there, I didn't put the other window. Yeah, that window can go in just here. Doesn't quite tally with the one above. And then coming to street level, warmed it up quite a bit as I get to the bottom. And within these arches it's quite a bit darker, but actually I don't want it to detract from my figures by being too dark, so I'm just going to go with my paler colour inside there. In that, and then I will just let it dry a bit before I put the arch in, the underside of the arch. So going up to the windows, I need to put window frames in, so which will be a little bit darker. I'm taking my claret colour, my yellow ochre and a hint of blue to cool it down, and I'm just going to put in the windows. Darker in there. And then to fill in my windows, I'm going to use a bit of blue. There's a black colour here that I've had on my palette for a while. I'm just going to go in, which one shall I have lit? I'll have that one lit and maybe this one. Oh, I was going to have that one lit. Yes, mustn't forget. I'm going to leave some gaps to suggest light reflecting on the windows. Yeah, that one could be a little bit more claret coloured. So I'm going to put yellow in my windows now to light them up. It's a little bit dark and dingy. I need a clean yellow, so I'll wipe a bit of my palette off and put it there. In there. And maybe this one and this one. So I'll leave those for a minute. I'll just fill in these ones here with a bit of dark. I'll do, and there was one here as well. And just to fill in my arch. Like that. My figures will be a lot darker, so they'll stand out. I'm going to start to fill in my darker areas. However, I need to figure this one out. Now, in the photograph, it's a little bit green, but there's not a lot of green going on in this painting, so I want it to have a bit of harmony. So I'm just going to put a bit of blue with yellow, but maybe have it mostly, and just fill that in. Oh, it has gone a little bit green. Not too bad though. There is a little bit of platform that I hadn't noticed before, which is down here. It's like a wedge. There's a dark shadow under there, under the platform. So I'm going to mix a little bit of my grey colour, but have it quite dark. Not enough paint. A little bit more of that colour. This actually will lead the eye towards the tram. Better. I'm going to put in that line a little bit darker of the lamp because it is darker. Oh, that made it a bit wonky. I'll take a bit off. And it's at this stage I can start to see it form, so I can actually start to adjust tonal values a little bit more. So I'm going to start work on the shelter here. I'm going to go with this blue and cover the lines. This is going to dry a little bit lighter than what I see in the photograph. So then I will put on a darker line. Line goes over there. And there's a few that actually, because they're so close together, they look quite solid. and that bottom one there. And I'm going to put in the poles. They need to be darker. And this pole here. The yellow also is a little bit darker under there. And I might soon start putting my figures in. Just going to put a little bit of a hint of yellow light around here. I'm going to put my tram lines in. I think that went a bit wrong, but artistic license. Shave a bit of that one off. And below the tram, because it's got headlights, there is a hint of yellow on the road. And I'm going to emphasize the roof here, so this comes forward a little bit. I quite like the tip of this brush actually, it's quite nice. Like that, and that bit of lamp will have to go a bit higher. Then it goes down here. Across there. Drops down, and then we've got a little bit of a line there, but not as strong. I'm going to put a bit of shadow under here. There is also a very fine line on the edge of the glass of the shelter, which brings it forward. Like that. And put a little bit more blue on here. And drop it down behind the roof, so it's actually touching instead of floating up in the sky. A little bit more yellow in the windows. And some of these windows are pretty dark over here. So I can start doing a few architectural features on the Midland. Do a little bit of a line that runs along there. It goes up and then comes back down again. And then that disappears a little bit as you go behind the light. Same here, underneath. And I think I need to mix that colour that I used for the bottom, which was the claret and yellow ochre and blue. A bit more yellow ochre to orange it up a bit. So at the bottom of the Midland there's quite a few shapes going on to suggest something like railings or figures, people maybe. So I'm just going to put a few suggestions of shapes. With my tram, I need to fill the glass in first. So pale blue, just a bit of ultramarine with what's on my palette. Well, it's not exactly pale blue, it's more of a grey. And that goes down. You've got quite a bit of reflected light in the side of the tram actually. And more of the blue. And then I'll go with the dark around the window. And that will bring it forward. You can just see a hint of the driver actually, so I'll put a shape in to suggest the driver. And then you do have a little bit of dark going down there and a line of dark up there. I haven't actually put the lights on the side of the tram. Could always use a little bit of gouache. Hint of orange. And also on the top above the window it's dark, so I'll just put that in. And there is a shadow underneath it. I'm thinking I might wash a bit more yellow over this area. Just give it a bit of a glaze. That's a bit better. It gives it more of a nighttime feel. I'm going to work on this a little bit. It's a bit heavy, this one, on this side. So what I might do is just put lines rather than that great big shape that is there. I think it needs a bit of colour. It's a bit dead black. So I'm going to mix a purple and then add a bit of yellow ochre. A bit more of the red. That might be a bit too much red, but actually no, I quite like that. I'm going to put a bit of yellow into it as well. maybe into here a bit. And then my building, I've ignored the library for a while, but it does need a bit of definition in some of the architecture. So there is a very fine line that runs along here. It might be a bit too blue and a bit too thick. And it has damp patches that drop down. Quite dark here as well. Actually might be too dark, so I can take a bit off. And then within here you have a darker arch. And then some kind of plaque. Take a bit out. And you also have window panes. So I'm going to use a bit of yellow ochre with the blue and a bit of the yellow that's already there, and I'm going to put in a few panes. That needs to be a bit more yellow ochreish. And using the very tip of my brush, put a few suggestions. I think I'd rather have it a little bit more yellow ochre actually. In here you've got a darker area and then a little hint, and likewise in there. So you do have the hint of windows here, but not necessarily below. So I'm going to darken these. And I think I'll start putting some of my figures in. I might take a little bit out here because it's a little bit too even. So most of my figures are quite dark. I'm going to make myself a black, not a black, sorry, a very dark grey with the claret and blue. No, actually it will be a black and a dark green. This is Viridian, which I wouldn't normally choose, but I don't know. I don't think I have any dark green. So Viridian is the nearest. I'm going to add a bit of yellow ochre into that to make it more solid. And maybe a touch of red. So that's an almost black. So going on to my figures, I am going to start with the nearest one, or the nearest one who's standing on the platform, and just fill in his shape. And as you can see, I'm going quite dark. I'm going to give him a brown briefcase. He's got a winter coat on. So I'm just filling in the shape of the coat. There's his briefcase. A little bit of ochre flesh colour for the face. To clear a bit of palette. Bit of red. I think that's a bit too dirty. I'll take that out. And maybe just put in a bit of a brighter red and a yellow. It's quite orange. Well, they've been on holiday. And that on there. Mostly you can't really see the faces. He's got dark hair. Actually, I'll let that dry a little bit. I'm going to put have a little bit of brown for his trousers, just for a little bit of a difference. So that's a bit of sienna I'm putting into my mix. And his legs like that together. And of course he needs feet. And there are some shadows underneath. Because there's so many different lightings going on here, the light source seems to be coming from different angles. So just to give him a bit of something, it seems that my shadow is going to go down this way. That's way too strong. So I'll take some of it out. Don't mind him disappearing off into the pavement. So the next one is going to be dark as well. Well, I suppose I could put a hint of red in there, a little bit purplish. So this is a woman with a hood. And she's actually holding something. She's just looking at something in her hand, could be a mobile phone. And I'm going to do her with bluish legs. So she's walking in from this direction. So they're all a bit bald at the moment. And this gentleman is grey. So for a bit of variation, that's what I'm going to do. He's got an arm that drops down to his side. And a scarf, because it is Manchester after all. And a backpack. And he has a strap that goes around his arm. I should have waited till I put that on. But he's got dark trousers. Like that. And the bush shelter has a couple of panels of metal going across like that. I need a bit more grey to fill around this figure, but I've just covered up a bit of my window, so I'll take that out again there. And this goes down to behind her. There is the machine, which is also yellow, like the tram. And a grey. I'll need to put a bit of blue in that, I think. And a bit of a paler grey here. made it a different colour just so it looks a bit different from the background. So I'll put a bit of hair on these people. And these figures, as they go further back, are just going to be less defined. So there's this figure here. Now she's got a bag as well. She's got a bit of a V-neck there. Her bag is sticking out. And then she's standing quite upright. And her feet, her legs go back, so she's balanced. And I might put a little hint of red in there. So the figure at the machine is also in a dark suit. So he's just leaning down. He's got one arm down his by his side, and his other arm is taking or putting in money or taking his ticket. Quite a big coat. And you can't really see his head actually. I'll just put in a bit of a paler hair colour. And then the figure here is busy looking at the notice board, I think. She's got long hair. And I'm going to put her in a bit of a colour. So maybe a purple. And she's holding something. And one leg is here, which is taking her weight, and the other leg is over there, not taking so much of her weight. We'll just fill in a few details on the machine. And also I want to put the railings in, quite pale. It's quite a lot of railings all bunched together. So moving on to these figures here, I'm just going to put them as shapes. So this figure is also in a big coat and he's kind of just stepping forward. Hands in pockets, giving him no neck, so I'll just have to take a bit out. I think her bag could be a little bit darker behind her and her legs. I haven't put so much about the trees actually. They need to go in. Put a bit of sienna into my greyish colour. And put the trees in a minute. I'll just finish my figures. So another figure here walking. And there are quite a few figures sort of in the background. So I'll just put suggestions of a few of those. There I can see there are a few bits of railings going on over here. And the building is a little bit more blue than I've got it. Just back here. And the figures over the other side are also quite dark. You can see their hair though, the hair colour. So one has got long brownish hair. And actually the other one's also got brownish hair, but it's a bit shorter. Then dark coats. And this one is wearing a jacket, so it's a bit shorter. And I'm going to give her brown trousers. There's a figure in between them who is going to be a little bit fainter. And then I'm going to just suggest a few more figures, as if it's quite busy. Figure down here. I'm going to put in the yellow of the shelter, and also it has a pillar. And it's a little bit hard to see where it goes actually, because there is a figure there who's half chopped off, and I don't want to put that figure in. A bit more glass down here. And a bit of tweaking here, because I'm not sure exactly what this is. Some kind of sign hanging down. Oh, I see what it is. It's the bus times. And I'm going to put a figure further down here. And my figure here has somewhat disappeared. They've got a big head. I might wipe them out because I'm not happy with them. That's it. So I think I made a bit more definition under the tram. It's better. And maybe under the platform. Too much red there, it's such a strong colour, you can easily swamp your mix. So more ultramarine and some more yellow ochre. So I'm going to rerun that line under the platform. And put a little bit more shadow around here to suggest pavement, and maybe a little bit of shadow running from these. The shadows actually seem to go off in this direction. Have some figures who are on a lower level than these, just walking around. Below some steps that actually look a bit odd. So I'm going to take the heads off and put some flesh colour in there. There's a bench, which I don't have to put in, but I think I will. And then darken this figure over the top of it. This figure could have a little bit more depth in his trousers. And backpack. And also this figure could also be a bit darker. I think I'm going to put some more colour into the hotel and also into the road. Definitely a bit more reflected yellow. To give it that feel of artificial light. A bit more definition in here, because these are pillars. And I might add a little bit of yellow into here. I think maybe I could start to add little bits of orange. I think that would make it more interesting. And a little bit more work on the Midland Hotel. Just a few suggested shapes. It looks a bit dark at the moment, but it will dry a lot lighter. Just put a bit of orange in there, it's a bit too orange. No, I'm not keen on that orange. I think I will take that out and stick with the reddish colour. darker over this side as well. And there are a few more people and figures around. So there's one here. It's a bit high up actually. Bring him down a little bit. He's walking. Could have him standing though with somebody else. And even in the distance going into the library, maybe a few more figures. And one maybe going down the ramp. And then I'm going to add some more yellow, give it a bit more life. Maybe around here. Not too much though. Don't want it to be acidic, just to suggest light coming from the library. This yellow here is a bit darker. I'm going to redefine my lady a little bit and the machine. And then I'm going to put some windows in. Should be more yellow ochre and blue, I think. I think my tram needs a little bit more of a something, so I'm just going to put my yellow on it, darken it up a little bit, and a little bit more. Actually, it's quite blue on the side of it because you've got a reflected light, so I'm going to put blue on it, just down here. Well, it's turned grey, but that works. So at the moment what I could do is, if I wanted to enhance the lights, is I could use a little bit of white gouache. I'll just put the pictures in here, the frames in here as well. And another bit of a ghost wash with the yellow. And a bit of tweaking. So that is going to be my sunset scene of an urban street in Manchester. I will probably still play with it a little bit, darkening areas and lightening areas.